Hey everyone, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. The first contrast often begins in silence. Streets that seem familiar through film and television reveal a softer, muted atmosphere that feels unusually restrained to many Americans stepping into the United Kingdom for the first time. Everyday life appears wrapped in a subtle quietness, where people move with a deliberate calm, conversations stay contained, and public emotion is measured rather than displayed. What initially feels like politeness quickly becomes something more intricate, an entire cultural rhythm built on understatement, indirect expression, and an almost invisible social order that governs how strangers share space. The early impressions for North Americans often form in the smallest interactions. A shopkeeper's reserved greeting, a commuter's brief half-smile, or the way crowds seem to flow without rushing even in the busiest districts creates an atmosphere that feels both welcoming and distant. Nothing about it is unfriendly. Instead, it carries the weight of centuries-old social habits, the kind that smooth tension by softening words, managing expectations, and assuming that everyone already understands the unspoken rules. Many Canadians describe the initial feeling as stepping into a hushed museum of everyday life. Where people guard their emotional temperature with remarkable skill, deeper differences begin to emerge in how communication unfolds. The famous British indirectness becomes not simply a stereotype, but a daily structural principle. Requests are softened with layers of qualifiers, gratitude is embedded in casual remarks, and disagreements are handled with quiet verbal choreography. To Americans accustomed to clarity and expressiveness, this can feel like navigating a landscape of coded language. A phrase like "not too bad" becomes an unexpected form of positivity. "It's fine" may hide mild disapproval. "If you have a moment" often signals genuine urgency. Australians, used to blunt warmth and open banter, often find themselves pausing trying to understand if a dry remark is sarcasm, politeness, or a gentle redirection. Typical scenes reflect these cultural contrasts. A crowded bus remains nearly silent even during rush hour, revealing a collective respect for privacy that doesn't require saying anything at all. Cues form with disciplined precision, shaped not by rules, but by shared expectation. A group of colleagues at a pub after work maintains a balance between friendliness and restraint, keeping personal matters behind a light shield of humor and subtle self-deprecation. In local neighborhoods, neighbors exchange quick greetings that hint at familiarity without crossing into intimacy. The emotional climate is steady, understated, and quietly self-contained. As days turn into weeks, many North Americans discover that this gentle reserve carries its own kind of warmth. Relationships form slowly but hold deeply. The avoidance of direct conflict isn't a lack of honesty, but a cultural commitment to harmony and civility. The deliberate pace of conversation encourages thoughtfulness. The soft emotional landscape creates a buffer that lowers social pressure. And in this environment, many Americans and Canadians begin to notice a shift in their own behavior, speaking slightly more carefully, listening more attentively, adjusting emotional volume to match the local tone. Gradually, the subtleties begin to reveal an underlying structure that shapes daily life. Many Americans notice how the British attachment to routine creates an atmosphere of steady predictability. The same cafe customers return at the same hour, trains depart with quiet regularity, and neighborhoods retain an unspoken rhythm that changes slowly over time. This consistency offers comfort, yet it can also feel rigid to those used to spontaneity. Australians, familiar with a more relaxed social fluidity, often observe how the UK's preference for order subtly limits casual improvisation, guiding interactions into familiar patterns that reinforce stability. Social boundaries play an equally significant role. Personal space is respected with remarkable precision, and emotional restraint operates as a form of politeness rather than distance. In work environments, the hierarchy feels gentle but firmly present. Decisions may be wrapped in cautious phrasing, yet the underlying respect for structure remains clear. Team discussions often prioritize consensus over bold individualism, creating a collaborative but slow-moving atmosphere that contrasts with the more assertive communication styles found in North America. Even humor follows this pattern: dry, understated, delivered with minimal expression, but often carrying layers of meaning beneath its surface. Common situations highlight this cultural choreography. In supermarkets, shoppers avoid small talk unless invited by circumstance. On public transport, commuters instinctively lower their voices, maintaining a shared cocoon of quiet neutrality. At social gatherings, introductions begin with modesty rather than enthusiasm, and compliments are exchanged with delicate understatement. Even the weather, often a topic of endless conversation, serves as a safe, neutral bridge that maintains connection without breaching personal boundaries. These interactions demonstrate a society built on subtle regulation, where comfort emerges from predictability and restraint. As weeks pass, many Americans and Australians experience an internal shift. The slower unveiling of friendships teaches patience. The emphasis on calm teaches self-regulation. The expectation to read between the lines encourages a deeper awareness of social nuance. Over time, what first felt distant becomes a form of stability, an environment where emotional moderation replaces volatility and mutual respect replaces speed. It is in this quiet transformation that North Americans begin to understand the deeper value of British reserve, not as a barrier, but as a cultural commitment to balance. This gradual adaptation often reshapes a visitor's understanding of connection itself. Many Americans, who initially arrive expecting lively friendliness, begin to notice how British relationships deepen through consistency rather than intensity. Bonds grow through shared routines, repeated encounters, and understated gestures that signal trust without proclamation. Australians, familiar with spontaneous camaraderie, observe how the UK's quieter social landscape encourages reflection, creating a sense of calm that contrasts with more outgoing social cultures. The absence of dramatics allows emotional steadiness to take root, slowly replacing the initial feeling of distance with a quiet form of belonging. These cultural traits influence far more than conversation. Workplaces, for example, reflect a balance between ambition and modesty. Performance is valued, but self-promotion is softened to avoid disrupting group harmony. Meetings prioritize diplomacy over speed, which can feel slow to North Americans accustomed to direct progress. Yet this approach creates a measured environment where sudden shifts are rare and decisions carry long-term intention. Even conflict, when it arises, is diffused through careful language and gentle humor, revealing a cultural preference for resolution without confrontation. Public life mirrors this emotional architecture. Local pubs become places of predictable comfort rather than social intensity. Neighborhood streets maintain a hushed civility even during busy hours. Everyday interactions unfold with a sense of quiet consideration, small, almost invisible choices that maintain social ease for everyone. It is within these seemingly simple moments that many foreigners discover an unexpected appreciation for the British way of life. The restraint that once felt isolating begins to feel like a shared agreement, a collective effort to keep public life balanced, polite, and emotionally manageable. In the end, the greatest revelation comes from recognizing how these cultural habits shape worldview. Many Americans and Canadians find that the UK's emphasis on subtlety encourages a slower, more observant way of living. The calm teaches patience. The indirectness teaches awareness. The quiet teaches emotional moderation. What begins as confusion transforms into understanding. And what once felt reserved reveals a deeper, steadier form of connection. The experience often leads to a simple reflection that every society builds its own emotional climate, shaped not by volume but by values. And in the United Kingdom, life moves not through grand gestures, but through soft edges, gentle boundaries, and an enduring respect for the quiet spaces between people.